Guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you for joining us on a Tuesday. It's great to be with you. Of course, we're live in Charlottesville, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. A lot on today's show. News from the College Inn. They put a Facebook post out earlier today. In fact, Judah, if you grab it from the College Inn Facebook page, it's the for sale, everything's gotta go Facebook post, and you want to get it on screen. I literally saw this about 2 minutes before today's show started and thought this was something that was intriguing, would be intriguing to you guys. We'll get to Alex Urpí in about 60 seconds here, Alex. They're doing a sale tomorrow. I'll read you verbatim what the Facebook post from the College Inn says. Sale tomorrow. And give me a thumbs up when you have that, Judah. Just type in College Inn. Okay, you got it. And go to the comment section. Pull the comment where they talk about selling the ranch dressing recipe for charity. That comment is too. So those that are listening to the show via Spotify, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, I'll read you the Facebook post verbatim. Sale Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's all got to go. Pots, pans, equipment, shelving, booths, tables, chairs, memorabilia, etc. Cash or business check only. You may have to wait in line to get in. That's what the Facebook post says. Then someone in that Facebook post left this comment. How about the ranch dressing recipe? Is that available? The College Inn responded to that comment and said, quote, "We've been talking about what to do with that. Maybe auctioning it with the proceeds to charity." So could potentially selling the College Inn ranch dressing recipe, and that ranch dressing recipe is off the chain. So Judah's got the Facebook post on screen for those that are watching the visual of this show. Look at the screen now. If you get the comments about the recipe, give me a thumbs up as well, J-Dubs. Oh, you do. Good job, Judah. Judah's got the comment for the ranch dressing recipe as well. That ranch dressing recipe will drum up a hell of a lot of money for charity. I mean, it is arguably the best ranch dressing in town. I'm chatting now with a College Inn employee. The speculation is that the College Inn may reopen in another location as a delivery-only business. No seating inside. More on that in a little bit. First, let's get to Alex Urpí, who is at Emergent Financial Services at their headquarters right now. And we have Alex on the line. Why don't we start with the College Inn news? They're selling everything, Alex. The pots, the pans, wow, the kitchen, the memorabilia, everything. This guy went to the University of Virginia. Alex did, so did I. So he knows the impact of this brand. Selling everything tomorrow, 10 to 2. What do you make of that, Alex?
It's surprising. It's interesting to jibe, I guess, with the notion that it's going to, you said the rumors are that it may continue in another form. But I guess for some reason, a lot of their assets that they have, they are not going to bring to the new location or won't be using.
And that's why I wonder if this speculation or these rumors are in fact true or not. Because if you're going to open the location in a different spot, selling off your utensils, your kitchen equipment does not make sense unless it's a new ownership group that's opening in a new spot. The current ownership group is trying to get any dollar it can by selling its equipment. The selling of the ranch dressing recipe.
That's surprising, though, because, I mean, a new ownership group would not want that to be sold if they intended to utilize it in any way themselves.
Right. And that's one of the best things.
How would a new owner purchase? I'd be surprised if a new owner purchased the College Inn and said, but I don't care about any of your recipes. I'm not purchasing those as part of this. That would be highly unusual. Usually you purchase all the intellectual property too.
I agree 100% with what he just said. Selling the ranch dressing recipe, the IP, leads me to believe that it may not reopen despite speculation from current team members on my messenger right now. I guess, what do you think the most valuable IP the College Inn has? It's got to be the phone number, right? 434-977-2710. I mean, that's like one of two phone numbers that I know.
That you have memorized. I mean, usually, I mean, with branding, typically, I mean, from my understanding, is when you're talking intangible property, typically the name and the brand is the number one intellectual property. So when you're buying the name of something, any symbols, markings, logos that go with it, that's typically your most valuable intellectual property. I don't know enough about restaurants to know where recipes fit into that in terms of the restaurant industry. But I mean, I would guess that the name, because I mean, I've heard that name since I started going to UVA back, in when was that? 2012 was when I transferred to UVA. So my suspicion would be that number one has got to be the name, and then number two, you're talking. I don't know about restaurants to know where the recipes fit into there, but I figure they have to have some significant value if the new ownership intends to continue it as a continuation of the College Inn and not just take the name and run with a completely different menu.
Alex Urpí, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. We're literally on the fly here. We're going to get to markets here in a matter of moments. What do you think is the most competitive business category in this town? You think it's restaurants?
I do think it's restaurants. Yeah. I mean, since I've been here, the number one thing, it just amazes me, turnover in restaurants, especially in particular locations, is just incredible that you just see them churn through so many iterations. There's always this certain spot in Stonefield next to the movie theater. Not the one that was Trevinia, just Trevinia was there for a long time.
The one that was parallel 38. Side. The one that was,
yes.
Is it that
the
one?
The parallel 38 one. Okay. It switched like 4 or 5 times since I've been here. And I think this is very difficult. There are so many restaurants per capita. I mean, for us as consumers, it's a good thing to have a large number of restaurants per capita. Because we're one of the highest in the country. At least when I read an article about this several years ago, we were one of the highest in the country. But on the flip side, as a restaurateur, that means you are in a very competitive business for people's dollars here because there are so many restaurants and so many good ones that have good reputations.
Alex Urpí, guys, our guest, CEO of Emergent Financial Services. Please think Emergent Financial Services when thinking about your future, when thinking about growing your portfolio and your wealth. They're trusted. Let's go to markets. Cathie Wood, the ARK Invest CEO.
Bitcoin ETF.
Yeah, dude. Bitcoin ETF. I can't get away from this cryptocurrency. It's everywhere.
The irony is the Bitcoin ETF news that they have filed with the SEC to create a Bitcoin ETF, and they're not the only one. There's several other attempts by large firms. I think Van Eck and WisdomTree also have pending filings with the SEC on the potential of cryptocurrency ETFs. The irony is this comes on the same day that the UK essentially bans the number one cryptocurrency trading platform in that country.
Right.
So, I mean, in the UK, your ability to even purchase cryptocurrencies has been severely curtailed on the same day that we're now having the news that there are multiple companies seeking cryptocurrency ETFs. So it's just two sides of the same coin, which is very interesting. Two different, I'd say, opposing forces at work here.
Cathie Wood is a smart lady. I mean, the returns for her fund, have been obscene returns here. Now, for the most part of this year, they've been flat. She's upticking of late. She's very tech-heavy invested, as you know.
Yep.
What do you think she's thinking here with the ETF?
I think two things. With ETFs, you can never separate ETFs. Because remember, they trade like stocks, but they're basically mutual funds. Very popular vehicles. Very easy to trade for the average retail investor. So it's hard for me to not see in some ways that she's thinking cash in on popular sentiment here. In other words, Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies very much in the news, very popular with individual investors as a temptation to purchase this ETF. And so why not get in there and have an ETF that is basically banking on the Bitcoin name so that when people search because remember, it's not that easy to buy Bitcoins. just as a currency. Currency trading is always very difficult for the retail investor. So she's probably looking, here's an opportunity. I know a lot of retail investors would love to be in Bitcoin. Maybe they can't afford $30,000+ per one Bitcoin.
For one Bitcoin,
right? Maybe they want to get in at a lower price point. So I'm going to make an ETF that tracks the price of Bitcoin, essentially. So I think that's part of it. Also, you can never deny it. So even if you're looking at something like Bitcoin and its long-term future is uncertain, and you sit there and say, well, do I want this as a long-term investment? That doesn't mean there's no interim speculative value, right? You could be sitting there and saying the same thing. You could be sitting there as an investor and saying, gold, do I really want gold long-term? What would I do with gold over 40 years? Well, that doesn't mean you don't want gold in your portfolio over the next 12 months, over the next 24 months. So there's reasons sometimes why people may speculate on something like Bitcoin, even if they're sitting there saying, well, I don't really care if Bitcoin ends up being a popular cryptocurrency in 20 years. I want to buy a Bitcoin ETF because I think Bitcoin will go up in the next 6 months and I want to try to make some quick cash, right? From a long-term portfolio perspective, would you do that in your portfolio? No. But from a short-term perspective, someone has $1,000 and they say, hey, I'd like to be in on Bitcoin, but I can't afford it with $1,000. Well, now you can get an ETF that tracks that. And so my suspicion is that's where she is headed with this. Not so much in the sense of, I think this is a great stock pick or this is a great investment pick, but rather start an ETF, tracks Bitcoin, and see if retail investors bite and invest in that.
There you go. That makes perfect sense. Well explained. Alex Urpí of Emergent Financial Services. You know something, Alex? I have a new favorite person that I'm following now on Twitter. That new favorite person is Xavier Urpí.
Xavier Urpí. On Twitter, he is sharing his insights.
And Twitter is a perfect platform for Xavier to share all that beautiful brain power that's percolating up there in his head. I'm going to read a couple tweets from Xavier Urpí on Twitter to you. Okay?
Go for it.
And then you go stream of conscious and just throw immediately back to me. So Xavier Urpí on Twitter 3 hours ago. And Xavier, I just followed you on Twitter. I'm your third follower, my friend. I like you.
He's gonna love that.
Yeah. Xavier Urpí says 3 hours ago, consumer spending is rebounding, but many malls are not. Which malls will survive? Which CMBS deals will be the big winners? Question mark. That tweet for you.
He's always been bid on CMBS. So CMBS, for people who don't know, is corporate mortgage-backed securities. So when you're in the bond business, you get to know these very well. So basically, you take a bunch of mortgages for commercial. So in other words, not mortgages of people who are purchasing homes, but mortgages of businesses owning commercial space. You package them and then you sell them as a security. A very interesting field that he's always been interested in. So he's definitely looking, I think what he's seeing there. And what's amazing is everyone who follows Xavier on Twitter, what you're basically getting is like snapshots of what he would normally send to the team, because we have like a team email address. And Xavier, through the Bloomberg and other research that he has, is just constantly feeding the research team, did you take a look at this? Did you see this? And what he's seeing there, obviously, is what's happening. We've seen a rebound in people buying. Right? Does that translate to retail stores that own commercial space doing well again? Enough that they are paying their mortgages right on time and they are still willing to buy commercial space, there's a big dichotomy there, right? We might see a rebound, but if that rebound is all Amazon and online shopping, retail businesses might not be interested in paying for commercial retail space. They might say, well, I'll just go on Square. I'll build myself a Square website. I'll have myself just work this out of the home and sell my goods online. Why invest in a commercial retail space? And that affects, we always think to the first order, right? The first order effect is what you see immediately in the markets, right? So you sit there and say, well, if businesses aren't selling to people, he's not going to lease this retail space. Second order is where sometimes there is money to be made, and Xavier's looking second order here is what happens to the people that have packaged those mortgages of commercial space. What happens to that market? What happens to those mortgages? Do some people prepay? Do they get out of this and say, I'm going to just pay this whole thing off and move? And that has effects because the money you make in those types of spaces changes depending on whether people prepay. So it's always an interesting field to look at the second order.
So help me. That was a good explanation. So CMBS, corporate mortgage-backed security.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't a CMBS be a bit vulnerable right now, or is the thinking retail outlets will, like you said, buy out the rest of their lease, which in maybe the short term, if retail outlets choose just to buy out the rest of their lease and shutter their location because they're not doing the sales they once did, we know malls may be a thing of the past, we're not sure yet, that then maybe the CMBS has some potential in the next 6 to 12 months. I mean, how do you look at that?
So I think there's two things. So CMBS, what's always interesting is there's different tranches.
Okay.
Some tranches of CMBS have principal in them. So if you're principal, you're somewhat, I mean, you don't want to lose out on the interest stream, right? So people prepaying isn't necessarily great, even for a CMBS, because you've bought this bond looking at an interest stream, and now someone prepays and now the interest is gone. So even if there's a prepayment penalty that someone pays, this occasionally happens when interest rates are really low. Someone will say, hey, I'm going to refinance this thing. So I'm going to pay off my mortgage, pay the prepayment penalty, and then get another mortgage at a lower rate, right? That can be good if there's a penalty and the penalty is larger for you as the CMBS holder than the interest stream you were looking at. You get a bunch of cash quickly. But if you didn't have that in there, you're saying, oh, the interest stream that I was expecting now isn't coming. So it's a fascinating world because there's principal and there's interest, and sometimes sometimes the first impression is, oh, I'm glad you just did all my principal back. I lent you this money, you repaid me in 2 days. I'm happy with that. But if you bought that bond, if you lent that money expecting to get 2 to 3% interest over the next 24 months, and then the guy prepays 2 days in, you're sitting there saying, what now? Now I have to go reinvest and find something that gets me that yield all over again. So it's not necessarily a good thing when people prepay, but then of course sometimes you don't necessarily want the risk that they don't pay at all, that they basically default.
Good stuff. Alex Urpí, Emergent Financial Services. All right, I'm going to give you another tweet from Xavier Urpí's big, beautiful brain here. U.S. personal spending stagnated in May. Is the consumer taking a breather, or is inflation the blame?
Ooh, oh, he's getting controversial with these tweets. He's really given.
Xavier, I'm retweeting that one, Xavier. I just retweeted that for you.
That's like a trivia question.
Yeah, I know. He's asking trivia on here. He's doing my job for me.
He is. That sounds like something you would tweet. Like, give me an answer here to this question. What's interesting to consumer, the spending stagnated, but consumer confidence, as measured in the surveys, I think today is now back to pre-pandemic levels. So it's a very interesting thing because you sit here saying, well, consumers are confident, they feel good, but they're not. Their spending has somewhat stalled. So I think inflation is a good possible bet there, because it is possible that people are looking at this and saying, well, inflation is here. What do I do? Do I need to save some more money? But I still feel great about where things are going. So inflation is always such a tricky behavioral thing to study, because you sit there as someone experiencing inflation, like you go to the food store, eggs are more expensive, bread's more expensive. And so you got two options, right? It's either I need to save more money because things might be more expensive tomorrow, or I need to go buy more today because it might be more expensive tomorrow. And whichever one you choose can have massive implications for the economy.
One more from the beautiful brain of Xavier Urpí. Xavier, tweet more. I want more content on your Twitter. I can't get enough of your Twitter, Xavier Urpí. All right, this one I saw earlier today and I was going to bring up to you, but he's tweeted it very succinctly. U.S. home prices jumped the most in more than 30 years in April. More than 30 years, home prices jumped the most, and more than 30 years in April. He says, what's the cause? Low mortgage rates or the COVID-related shift from city life to suburban life? I'll unpack this a little further. This is a topic I know well. I think it's a combination of all that, low mortgage rates, the COVID-related shift, as Xavier explained. I also think that it has to do with the fact that new construction has been lagging from a production standpoint for over a decade. So we've created this problem by not building enough homes to keep up with millennials and families that are entering the market and scooping these homes up. So I think it's a collision of all these things happening at the same time. Your thoughts, my friend?
No, I agree with you. I saw an interesting tidbit because when I saw that news today, I went to go look that up a little. And it's interesting that basically the last time that this happened, this type of demand we had was 2005, right? Just basically in the run up to the recession. But mortgage rates today are 50% of what they were back then.
Right, lower.
They're lower. They're 50% lower than they were back then. So typically, the one thing that would constrain that kind of demand is high mortgage rates. But we don't have those because the Federal Reserve, of course, has been tamping down interest rates, which reduce mortgage rates. And so it's very interesting to see because you have that demand. And I think, like you said, the demand and supply are out of whack. But what would normally be a constraint in the form of high interest rates are not there. They're 50% less than they were last time we saw this demand. So it's really not surprising then that if you have demand outstripping supply to this degree and no let up in demand in the foreseeable future, that home prices are going up because you have people selling them looking not just at today's market, but saying, well, I don't see this changing in the next 6 months, so I'm willing to take a chance and basically charge more for my home because I don't think that anything's changing. I think there's still going to be demand 6 months from now.
This market, not everyone, but a lot of people try to compare this to the housing crash of 08, 09. And we know real estate and housing created the 08, 09 recession. I think it's completely different and not a bubble at all. I mean, in this particular housing market, this is a supply issue. People are not getting loans with shady credit. I mean, 07, 08, leading up to that recession, anybody and their mother were getting loans. They may have been adjustable rate loans that ballooned really quickly, 3, 5, 7 years,
Absolutely.
But everyone was getting loans. 07, 08, everyone was pulling money out of their house, using their house as a piggy bank. I think we learned from the you-know-what that hit the fan in 08, 09, and what's happening now is completely different. There's equity in people's homes, more equity than ever before. That's why I'm not really concerned about a bubble in housing. Your thoughts?
I think it's funny. My philosophy always tends to be the thing about black swan events is that you don't see them coming. So the fact that we're all looking at housing and saying, could this be 2008, means there's a good chance that the next recession is not going to be caused by a housing bubble. Because we're all sitting here looking at this and saying, is it a housing bubble? Is it supply and demand? And so the odds of that being the catalyst for another recession are slim because usually you don't see those coming. When it happened in 08,
no one saw it.
Very few people saw it coming.
Right.
So that's usually how these things work. So I tend not to worry about the things that you see coming because those are typically not what causes the black swan events. And like you said, a mismatch between demand and supply is very different from a bubble because in a bubble you have what's essentially a glut of supply. You have high inventory, right? The way a bubble works, even just in a general recession, right? Inventory gets built up to such a degree to keep up with demand that when demand falls, now you have all this leftover inventory, prices plummet, and now you're on your way to a recession. As long as there is supply that is below demand, you don't have that high buildup of inventory. I mean, if there is in fact a shortage of homes, given the number of people that want them, you don't have that inventory problem. Because by definition, you don't have more inventory than demand. So you can't have that cascading collapse of prices because the inventory is not overbuilt. And so that's the key difference here. The key always with when you're fearing an asset collapse or an asset bubble is, has the inventory risen to such a degree that if demand slows down, you now have too much inventory? And I'm not sure we're seeing that yet.
Okay, we'll close on this. A recession statistically happens what? Every 10 years?
So by definition, 2 straight quarters of negative growth.
And do they happen generally historically like every decade or so?
Historically, every decade or so. I mean, they used to happen. It's very interesting. Prior to the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, they were basically like clockwork, almost every decade. Since the creation of the Federal Reserve, there's been longer periods where we haven't had them, but obviously they've been slightly more devastating on the back end of that. Typically, you're talking a decade, so we are definitely on the long end.
Okay. I mean, I'm a bull. You're a bull. You're a positive guy. I hate to be a negative Nancy or get bearish here, but we both see that it's been past the decade since the last recession. What do you see, hunch or instinct, or at the boardroom table at Emergent Financial Services when you guys are bantering back and forth, as the potential cause of the next recession? We don't think it's going to be housing. Okay, no. You've convinced me that this inflation thing is not something to worry as much about. You see it passing. Okay,
I do. We do see it as being transitory.
You see it as being transitory. I'm seeing a lot of froth on the markets right now. I mean, we're at all-time highs everywhere, literally everywhere. We got all-time highs in the housing market. We got all-time highs, on the NASDAQ and the S&P?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, all-time highs everywhere.
Or just off their highs.
Yeah.
They're either all-time or just off.
Right. Wick Hauer and I are talking about our portfolios, and we're like, good God, it's like 2020 again over the last 45 days or so. Okay? So
Indeed.
There's froth everywhere. What is going to cause the next recession?
See, our philosophy, I'm going to be honest with you, we don't even think about that at Emergent. My thinking is always, rather than trying to predict what's going to cause the next recession, we sit there and look at the portfolios that we have and say, are we protected against the downside? In other words, what happens if there's a downside? If the market, we run scenario tests, if the market plummets 35%, what happens to our portfolios? And so my philosophy always tends to be, and ours at Emergent, is what do we do to just make sure we have the right set of diversification to protect, not try to pick it, because it's, to be honest, and if you asked Xavier, he'd say the exact same thing, is the thing I tell you it's going to be is probably not what it will be.
Okay. So
if I sit here and say, oh, I'm worried about X, it's probably going to be Y, because they're just so hard to predict.
Well, that means you're not worried about housing and you're not worried about inflation.
So it could be one of those two. But no, and I mean, in all seriousness, and especially, and Xavier would tell you this too, one thing that has changed dramatically since 2008 is just the movement of central banks. Because I'm going to be honest, when 2016 election was coming around, I was sitting here saying it's been almost 10 years since the last recession. It's going to happen sooner or later. And now here we are 5 years later, and it still has not happened. And you sit there and you look at all the money that we have pumped into the system and the movement of the stock market, and you sit there and say PE ratios are well past levels we would have thought were sustainable in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And here we are in 2021, and they're still pushing them. So, and I think one of the major things that has changed is central banks do not behave like they did pre-2008. What they have done in terms of interest rates and pumping money in the system is unprecedented. There is literally no precedent for this. There's no precedent for negative rates in Europe and in Japan. And so you sit here and say things that we thought were impossible from an economic standpoint have been happening. What do we do with the old rules? Do the old rules apply anymore? Are we going to see recessions in the same way we did before, where they happen with the same level of frequency? Are we going to be seeing asset bubbles? Is the asset bubble the dollar? Is the asset bubble the stock market? It's very difficult to look at this with the paradigms that we've been looking at it in the past and say that we can look at things and say, well, this is where we might potentially see recessions, because things have changed dramatically. And I just think as investors and as people who save in the long term, it's one of the things we have to always be aware of is, have things changed? Have the rules of the game changed such that I cannot pull myself out of the market expecting a recession based on timelines and statistics that I would have looked at 15 years ago, and thereby miss out on the gains? Because if we were playing by the rules of 15 years ago, you would have pulled out. I would have been done pulling out and scaling back at the end of 2019 and sitting there saying PE ratios are at 29, 30. I'm out. This is the level where you expect collapse on the other side. Early 2019, I think we were seeing not volatility, but volume was plummeting. And you sit there and say low volume, high prices, that's a stock market crash. Didn't happen. I mean, if you pulled out prior to 2020, you're kicking yourself right now.
You lost a ton of return.
You lost a ton of upside. Yeah. So one of the most important things I always say to people, just as investors, as clients, as people looking long term, is don't get caught playing by the rules of the last recession or the previous game. You have to look at what the rules are now. And as everything that I was taught in Economics 101 saying this does not go on forever, it's still valid. I mean, it's possible, but I need to look at there and saying what's happening now. And how do I react to what's happening now and the way other actors like the Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank and the Bank of Japan are acting now? And what do I do based on that information? And if that means that the rules of 15 years ago don't seem to be applying right now, then that's what it is. I can't be caught losing out on potential gains because I'm still playing by old rules. And it's hard for people to wrap their heads around. And it's hard for me as someone who came of age in 2008, 2009.
Me too.
To see this kind of market increase and not be worried about it. Because, I mean, my first two big memories are 2000 tech boom crash and 2008 financial crisis. And you sit there and say, this doesn't feel right. But the right thing to do, just even from a practical standpoint, is say, am I doing this based on my prior experience or based on current facts on the ground? And if current facts on the ground are different, then I have to go with those. I can't be playing by old rules.
I love it. This guy's fantastic. Emergent Financial Services guys, you can trust them. They're proven. They're approachable. They're honest. This guy's the CEO of Emergent Financial Services, truly a family-owned firm. The social media ninja, Nicholas Urpí, is doing his social media talents right now on social media. We love the social media ninja.
He is. He is.
All right, my friend, today y mañana, give us a spotlight.
Oh, it's going to be really fun. So first, we're going to have Carla Chavez Mayorga from Azul Family Dentistry. She's going to join us via Skype. So that is going to be a lot of fun. So a new family dentistry, Latina owned. Here in the region. I think she's closer to Afton, but close to Charlottesville region. So she's going to join us. Dentists, as we know, they're always busy people. So she's going to Skype with us to open the show. And then we're going to talk a little taxes.
Ooh.
Because we're going to have on Jennifer Lehman, CPA. She's the CEO of Hansman Weevil.
Get out of town.
So she's going to, yep. Nick has nabbed that great guest for us. So we're really excited to have her on because, Xavier and I were always thinking, even just for people to think about for their retirement, where do we think taxes are going? What are some things that people might not think about when they're thinking about their taxes? Things that are either in the pipeline or already in place that you just, April 15th comes around, you're filing, you don't talk about. And so, I mean, a great CPA mind, the CEO of Hansman Weevil. So we're going to get some thoughts and just her experiences and what she's seen.
That's a big time guest. Is she in studio?
She's going to be in studio.
Dude, Nicholas Urpí, bravo, Chico. I'm giving you the round of applause for Nicholas Urpí right there. Dude, you're great. You're so easy to interview and chat with. Today y mañana is Thursdays at 10:15 a.m., guys. Thursdays at 10:15 a.m. Just a fantastic show. Xavier Urpí on Twitter. I can't wait for your next tweet. I'm following you, Xavier, and I'm watching closely. Please keep the content coming, sir.
Keep an eye on it. I encourage people to follow. You'll get some really good
Knowledge.
just things to think about. He makes you think is what it is. My dad's Xavier's really good making you think.
Well, I appreciate your time today. We'll see you Thursday. We'll see you at 9:30.
9:30. I will see
All right,
you
you have
then.
a good one.
Looking forward to it. You too.
I love that guy. I love that family, man. I love that family. I'll say it again. Emergent Financial Services is super legit. And Xavier and Alex and Michael and Nicholas, I mean, stand-up guys. They take complicated material and they present it in a way that's approachable and digestible. So you leave not only knowing that your portfolio and your money's safe, but you leave understanding why your portfolio and your money is safe and generating returns. For me, that's really important, is not only the trust, but the empowerment of the knowledge. And that's what I love about those guys, is you learn what they're doing as opposed to just being told what to do by your advisor. Two very different methodologies of managing money. They want to educate along with invest wisely. Couple things that I want to relay to you. Speaking of CEOs, I mean, the CEO of Hanson and Webel is a woman. I love that. I absolutely love that. The co-CEO of the Washington football team is now Daniel Snyder's wife, Tanya. So Tanya Snyder named co-CEO of the Washington football team as they try to get out of this scandal that's tied to chauvinistic behavior, misogynist behavior, harassment of cheerleaders and interns by upper executives within the Washington front office. So now Daniel Snyder's wife named co-CEO of the Washington football team, as Daniel Snyder goes right next to him in the bed, his wife, and says, "Help us get out of this predicament that's been brewing in our front office for a long period of time." Smart move by Snyder and the Washington football team. A piece of news to relay to you, and then we'll get back to the College Inn story that I think you're going to see everywhere after this show and us putting it out on our platforms. The Greyhound bus station on West Main Street, it used to be a true bus station where you could walk in, buy tickets, get some food like some snacks and some sodas from the vending machine, talk to a Greyhound employee or two, and most importantly, walk inside to get out of the inclement weather, whether it's the summer heat and humidity, the winter cold and snow, or all the rain we get in the spring and fall. The Greyhound bus station on West Main is no longer a bus station. It is strictly a bus stop. So you can't buy tickets inside. You can't even go inside. The building is for sale. You cannot go inside the Greyhound station anymore on West Main. There's no interacting with personnel. There's no vending machines. There's no getting out of the heat, the cold, the rain, the snow, the humidity. It is now strictly a stop, a bus stop, where you're waiting for a Greyhound to pick you up, and then you print your tickets and you buy them online and you show it to the driver at the stop before boarding the bus. That's big news there. And why that's big news is because Greyhound is the transportation choice of men and women that don't have a ton of money. A plane costs more money than a bus. A plane ticket than a bus ticket. A train ticket costs more money than a bus ticket. So by taking the station out of Charlottesville, you can further make the argument that the area is turning into this white rich playground even more. Think about what you're saying. There's no station. You have to have a computer or a smartphone. You need to be able to print your tickets. You need to be able to access the internet. You need to have a computer or smartphone to buy your tickets. You're not going to have any place to get out of the inclement weather, the heat. So if you're waiting for your bus right now, you're standing outside on an asphalt pavement in, what's the temperature? I'm looking at the weather app as we speak. The temperature is 92 degrees today, and it feels like it's 99. So you want to ride the Greyhound in Charlottesville, Virginia? You're standing out in basically 100-degree heat on an asphalt parking lot. You can't print your tickets. You got to print your tickets on your computer. You have to have access to the internet. I mean, this impacts families and individuals that don't have financial resources. This is the method of choice because it's the most affordable transportation choice for those that don't have a ton of money. And now we're marginalizing it even more with the station now becoming a stop, with the building for sale, and with Greyhound going on record saying we will not open the Charlottesville station ever again. It's going to be a stop from here on out. That marginalizes disenfranchised individuals. The lead of today's show, a Facebook post that was sent to me by a number of people, was the College Inn post. Get the College Inn story back on. If you could get that post back on screen and give me, oh, you got it? Thank you, J-Dubs. For sale. I mean, tomorrow's the auction, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., everything's got to go. Pots, pans, equipment, shelving, booths, tables, chairs, and memorabilia. Cash or business check only. You may have to wait in line. Someone puts in the comment section under the post, how about the ranch dressing recipe? The College Inn responds by saying, we've been talking about what to do with that. Maybe auctioning it with the proceeds to benefit charity. Depending on who you talk to, Stu and Mike are the owners of the College Inn now. Tip Top Terry owns the business. Tip Top Terry started the College Inn. I've heard Tip Top Terry owns the phone number, 977-2710. Depending on who you talk to, the College Inn is going to reopen later this summer in a different location as a delivery-only business. If you're selling the ranch dressing recipe, is that an indicator that it's not going to open somewhere else? I mean, the ranch dressing recipe is super legit. Scott Aaronworth, the Esquire from Virginia Beach, says Dr. Hose's ranch is better. I may give you that, Scott. You might be right with that. Is Dr. Hose ranch dressing the best ranch dressing in Central Virginia? It's got to be between College Inn and Dr. Hose. Judah, do you have any? Can you get that mic in front of you?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who it is.
Because you like food. This dude loves to eat like I love to eat.
And I love me some ranch.
Oh, I'd bathe in ranch dressing if I could.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what challenges Dr. Hose or the College Inn ranch?
Oh, let's see.
I mean, I can't think of any better ranch. Can you?
I'm trying to remember. I can't think of one.
Well, if you think of one, let me know. What has better ranch than those two? And College Inn may auction off its ranch dressing recipe for charity. That's going to get some ducats for some nonprofit, don't you think? I mean, I may give a slight edge to Dr. Hose Ranch. I believe Dr. Hose bottles the ranch for off-site enjoyment. I believe they do. I say they're one with the College Inn a close second from a ranch dressing standpoint. Anywho, we'll follow the auction closely. I'm going to miss the college inn. As Bob Shotta said on Facebook, Bob Shotta, we love when you watch. By the way, if the iconic Little Johns can't make it, can anyone? He means on the UVA corner. It took the white spot. The white spot needed a group of investors to keep it going in the right direction. Ralph Sampson's one of those investors. So a group of alumni in college, a group of alumni purchased the white spot. A group of people in their capital needed to keep the white spot heading in the right direction. I'll say this. Guys like, take an Andy McClure. Andy McClure owns the Biltmore and he owns the Virginian. So he owns 2 locations on the corner. Andy also owns Citizen Burger Bar. I believe he's an owner of Citizen Bowl Shop. He's one of the owners of Bell in Belmont. He previously owned Tavern and Grocery before selling it, but he sold it to Ashley Sieg. Ashley Sieg is the current owner of Tavern and Grocery. Andy's opening up a Citizen Burger taco concept in Dairy Market. I believe that should open really soon. A guy like a Andy McClure should be cherished, should be championed for what he's doing with his brands and businesses and how he's keeping them local. We need to support the Andy McClures at the Biltmore and the Virginian, the Jordan Brunks at the Crozet Pizza at Buddhist Biker Bar, the Michael Lewises at Boylan Heights, the Lorenzoni family at Ragged Mountain Running Shop, the Mincers at Mincers Sportswear. We got to support these people, because if we don't support these brands and these businesses in high rent districts like the UVA corner, before you know it, the UVA corner is going to go the way of the Shops at Stonefield. And the Shops at Stonefield is nothing but big box brands. So if we don't go and open our wallets and literally walk into these businesses and support them, the future of the corner is that of the Shops of Stonefield, and that's not the future I want for the beloved UVA corner. I want the charm and the intimacy and the quaint shops and the localized brands, not brands that I can find anywhere in America, no matter the city. And I think we all want the same. All right, tomorrow's Chris Skipper, fitness and exercise enthusiast in studio. Chris Skipper has had a massive 180 with his outlook on life, his positivity, his health, his fitness, and how he inspires others through his personal journey. His personal journey was that of some alcoholism, terrible health, no fitness, and not a great diet. And today, Chris Skipper is the absolute opposite of that. He's given up drinking. He is a physically fit specimen. And he is literally, I hope someone tags Chris Skipper on what I'm saying here. He is literally one of the most inspiring people I've been around or met in my life. So Chris Skipper in studio tomorrow on the I Love CVille Show. We will showcase his fitness journey, his trials and tribulations as a man. And we're going to spotlight his quest to use fitness and inspiration in entrepreneurship. He's pursuing the path of an entrepreneur through fitness, health, diet, and inspirational coaching. That story on tomorrow's I Love CVille Show. Thank you for joining us on a Tuesday. Yes, we will follow the College Inn story closely on the show. You guys have a good afternoon. Take care.